Hey, BD1. I'm Cal. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm looking for someone. No, not you. I'm searching for a Jedi, I think. Hold on. You know the Jedi? What do you know? Wait, hold on!
Did you just slice that? Thanks.
From late meat. It's virtually impossible, the memes and the narrative, because you're just virtually surrounded by these bovine. If memory serves, there was something in there about
Welcome, channel. We're back. And I want to say some disclaimers. Please don't forget to watch the full video from beginning to end so you don't miss a single detail. Included and under Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107. Violence is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news report, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright status that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
at least the Greys, the Zeta Reticulians, being one of
this Christmas comes up.
if memory serves, there was something in there about at least the Greys, the Zeta Reticulians, being one of the genetic engineering groups, had genetically altered or corrected the human race something on the order of 28 times by that point, okay? So 28 different times in the evolution of the human race, there was these corrections, these genetic alterations. And that's just one race, that's just the Zetas. But who are the Zetas really working for? I would argue that at least some of the gray factions work for the reptilians. They work for the Draco. They work for the Orion Empire, essentially. Hello again, everybody. This is James. Fish out of the way. We're talking about monstrous, they live level gaslighting by the corporate media. And again, that's why you surface level truthers are still lagging. You're lagging. Because you don't realize what's happened in the, for example, the astral dreamscapes, the stage managed dreams that abduct these MyLabs and demonically tormented people have had to endure, where literally their dreamscape at night becomes a terror zone. Because these entities, this is where the term being tormented from demons, going back well before the Middle Ages, that's where it came from. These nocturnal spirits, because we're sleeping, these entities, interdimensional, non-corporeal from our 3D perspective, they have the tactical and strategic high ground. They can literally enter into a sleeping person and take over their dreamscape from within, what I've called, and Candy Turner and I talked about this decades ago, stage-managed dreams, right? So the things you've seen in Freddy Krueger, which Hollywood has been cramming down your throat and into your eyeballs, all this time, and later it really degenerated into just sheer blood and murder. It's almost like people like John Wayne Gacy, and I'm not trying to be funny, but people similar to John Wayne Gacy and Jeffrey Dahmer sat around, oh, let's write some screenplays. Let's make movies. Let's make slasher type. Was one. Prepping you, cramming you with this information from a sadistic, psychotic perspective, and essentially non-human perspective, cramming it in your face and making it seem like it's cool and trendy to be scared of the theaters. That is the reality that's been going all along sub rosa, and then now it's come out into the open. But for those people who've been, quote-unquote, demonically tormented, or have had stage-managed dreams taken over by reptilians, greys, or you name it, they live these Freddy Krueger nightmares, but in real time, in a way that no 3D understanding of space and time could understand. Because these people are literally trapped within their own bodies at night, paralysis, they can't wake themselves up, and they literally have, for lack of a better term, but a term that some Christians might understand, a demon inside of them.
I sense something over here.
Call it reptilian for people like us, or and BSD.
Hey folks, welcome back to the Roswell UFO Conference, and as you know, we're working with the Roswell UFO Festival. The overcoat is off, the man's black stuff is off. This is the last of the 4 days of lectures. Mr. James Bartlett coming up. And we're clocking out pretty soon after our panel discussion, which will be in here 3 o'clock beginning after this lecture. Give or take, you know how things are running, and we may have to redo the stage a little bit. But since I'm in this, on your way out of the convention center, this is our actual UFO Festival Committee shirt. And you would not believe, since last September, 9-10 months of people that have been that already had full-time jobs, putting in first 5 or 10, then 10 or 20, 30, and more hours a week to make everything you've seen happen in Roswell happen. And even those things that didn't happen, we still put a lot of work into making them not happen. But anyway.
All right, maybe I'll listen to you next time.
When you see anybody in a purple shirt, give them a big hug, put a $100 bill in their pocket, whatever. Thank them, because the mayor has done it in front of the press, the tireless, countless hours that everybody on the committee has put in. But we appreciate it. We've heard everything great about this. It's bigger than the 50th, this is the best organized, most high-end, blah, 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 blah. And I didn't do all that. I got brought in this position the last 5 or 6 weeks, but I've always been on the committee. You see a purple shirt, they need a hug. I'm just telling you. But with all that said, I didn't print an official bio for Mr. Bartley, and you remember how we built it on the website until he arrived safely, which almost didn't happen. No lie, he can tell the story if he wishes. We weren't even going to mention James Bartley's name, and plus we have a flair for the drama, and you fell for it. So, because honestly, he's not anyone you've heard a lot of, but the program I do live from Roswell.com, we were discussing my lab's military abductions with Leah Haley one day, and she recommended get him on for the second portion of it too. I had not heard of him, but both Leah Haley and Steve Gorgeon told me, yeah, you're someone you didn't talk to. We had a really incredible, mind-blowing discussion. He was very solid, and he actually knows how to give a presentation as well. Mr. James Bartley.
Thank you very much for coming here. Can everyone hear me? This is truly a beautiful place, and I respect your understanding of the significance of this weekend. You could have been anywhere this weekend, but you chose to be here. And that tells me a lot about you. It tells me that you're a very proud that really has understanding.
Careful over there. That doesn't look safe.
The information I'm going to share with you today
it's like back at the scrapyard.
Very controversial. It's very negative, profoundly negative. But I will throw a bone out at the end and leave you with a happy message. I don't want you to leave here.
I'm coming.
The information I'm going to share is information that is not dominant in the UFO community. Most of the other alien abduction researchers, for whatever reason, have deliberately left out a lot of the information relative to the reptilian military abductions in my lab. My labs are legitimate alien abductions.
Hey, that was pretty
For
brave.
reasons which I will explain are kidnapped, trained, and utilized as
I can help you with
deep
that.
black operatives by
Will you let me?
elements of the military intelligence community.
Oh.
And
Okay.
this information has come with a price. There's many people I know, some who've literally been killed, some who've
This
been
conflict
harassed.
is busted, but this should
Not
help
just
you get moving for
from
now.
humans, but from the reptilians and the aliens themselves. Any half-rate
Okay.
UFO researcher
Try that.
monitored or harassed by deep black elements of the human military intelligence community. However, when a researcher or an abductee
Yeah, that's where I was headed too.
starts getting harassed directly by the reptilian, for
Well,
example,
First, we gotta
you
figure
know
out a
that
way
that
out of this place.
crossed over the threshold of the big league. And I will go into details about that in my talk. Now, before I delve into the speech, there's certain issues that I need to raise. One of which is the issue of credibility. For too long, the American people have obtained their information about various and sundry subjects from non-credible sources. And just to give you a few examples, I'd like to share from history examples where the academic community, the scientific community, and establishment historians have all collaborated in effect to dumb down the public. Pearl Harbor conspiracies, JFK conspiracies, they're still being maintained today because the full truth about any of those subjects were to be revealed, it would undermine other conspiracies that they are tangentially connected to. Now, one of the problems I've always had is people who are always trying to big shot me. People that are PhDs, people that are scientists, people that are
BD, that's a
members,
little small
former
for
members
me.
of the aerospace
Don't
community.
worry, I'll find my own way
Show up
out.
at this conference, jumping on the chest like Tarzan.
Fit.
Here I am,
Hope this
big
should
shot
work.
research. You have to listen to me, I know what I'm talking about. Time after time, in examples such as MIA, missing prisoners of war, atomic veterans have been used and utilized in radiation experiments or have taken part in above-ground atmospheric nuclear tests. Veterans of Southeast Asian conflict that were afflicted with what's been known as Agent Orange syndrome, exposure to dioxin, and most recently, which has come about, the use of
Yeah,
anthrax
I'm
vaccine.
all right.
There's an excellent book about the subject called Vaccine Day by someone named Matsumoto. And what all these subjects have in common is
Healing stim.
when these people that have been
You're full of
afflicted
surprises.
one sort of ailment or another have come forward to the VA department,
That's
to
better.
the rest of the
Thanks,
medical
little droid.
scientific community. What has always happened, without
Okay,
exception,
let's try this
is
again.
that some establishment shill,
Oh.
some scientist, some academic,
Okay.
always pops up
Here,
and
hop on board.
dismisses out of hand the claims of the sufferer of Agent Orange, the sufferer of
How'd you get
radiation, the
Don't
sufferer
remember. I've never known a forgetful droid.
of the anthrax vaccine.
Can't argue with that.
There's a gigantic dung heap of these establishment shills that have sought to suppress and downplay and marginalize any information which contradicts the official spin. Most often as not, the excuse has been used of a psychological disorder, a psychological aberration on the part of veterans suffering from
That's where we
Gulf
need
War
to go.
syndrome,
I
veterans
can
suffering
feel
from Agent Orange exposure. Things such as deliberate disappearance of military records of some of these individuals who suffered from radiation exposure has been
Mapped everywhere
utilized.
we've been.
Now, it's interesting when Bob Lazar came forward with his astonishing claims about his work at S4, and it turned out that his educational records couldn't be found. The debunkers all had a good laugh and said, well, he can't prove that he's a scientist. He can't prove he worked at Los Alamos. But that modus
I can't make it
operandi
over
is
there.
used
We gotta
against
find
people
another way.
who've been exposed to radiation, who've been exposed to dioxins from Agent Orange, who've been exposed in a number of other instances. It's not a new method of dealing with potential whistleblowers. There's a corporate financial agenda at work which strives to attain global centralized control at the expense of the individual. So I want you to keep that in mind as I speak today, because people are going to wonder about my credibility. They're going to wonder about the credibility of the abductee in my life, me. And yet, for many years, these same people who are questioning the credibility of myself and my colleagues have bought into the lies of the establishment, have bought into the lies of the scientific community. And nowhere is that more prevalent than in the UFO field. For example, today is the age of the camcorder. You can't very well debunk and mock and ridicule a camcorder. So what happens? These experts in the aerospace field pop up like so many pieces of feces which refuse to stay flushed. They pop up and they say, oh, well, that's just the stealth craft. And the dumb, ignorant audience, the national television audience, nods their head dumbly, yeah, stealth. But stealth, folks, has nothing to do with the visual spectrum. Stealth has everything to do with what's known as the radar cross-section, the RCS, of a craft, utilizing certain composite materials, designing the craft in such a way as there's no right angles to reflect back radar signals. The radar cross-section can be reduced to such an extent that for all intents and purposes it is invisible to radar. Not entirely invisible, but small enough to thwart any attempt at ground control intercept radar stations, airborne radar lock-on platforms to lock on craft. So when people say, well, that video shows like a stealth aircraft, that's just another lie. And they can only get away with that because the general public is ignorant about this thing. If it was a stealth aircraft, what is it doing lighting up the whole countryside? Doesn't that defeat the whole purpose of stealth? I mean, think about it. It defeats the whole purpose of stealth. Now, and unless you're talking about the invisible jumbo jet attack in the Pentagon, that was equipped with a Romulan cloaking device. But the thing is, you always have these shills, and there's some here at this conference, UFO debunkers. Now, you can always tell who a UFO debunker is. Essentially a paid government liar. How do you know? Well, rule number one in counterintelligence, psychological warfare, you have to have a plausible reason for being someplace. If you're, and by its very nature, a UFO debunker is a covert and deniable asset of the U.S. government or some other government. But they have to have an explanation for being somewhere. This is like in overseas operations. A person may have the cover of Agency for International Development. They can have the cover of a foreign service worker. They can have a cover of a relief worker. A UFO debunker doesn't have a reason for being here. They don't have a reason why. On the pretty websites, they have nothing but articles debunking alien abductions, debunking the UFO subject in general. So just keep all this in mind. I have to preface this because there are some people out there that still cling on to this notion that people with PhDs and other letters after their name are somehow more credible than people who don't have those letters after their name. So now that I got that out of the way, you're probably wondering who I am. My name is James Bartley, and I've had somewhat of an eclectic background. The telecommunications field and insurance industry. I spent a number of years as a civilian working in an intelligence-related capacity for the Department of the Navy, particular Naval Air Forces. My rather innocuous title was that of database coordinator. I worked in communications. One of the things that always struck me as humorous is all these experts with magnifying glasses poring over alleged official government documents, and they're saying, well, the comma is out of place, oh, well, the font is not right. Well, I really can't comment on how the formatting was years ago, but I know that today, really, some of the official messages you will read from different commands can be as breezy and as irreverent as an email. They don't necessarily follow a particular standard. Now, what did I do? Well, I really can't elaborate on what I did in communications because the powers that be are bound and determined to go to war with China and God knows how many other things. But I will say that probably more than most in the intelligence community, I had extreme exposure to intelligence summaries from a multitude of intelligence agencies. Ones that you're familiar with, maybe not so familiar with. Also, R&D centers like the Army's Missile Development Center, Redstone Arsenal, the various intelligence sections of the various commands, theater-level commands, Army-level commands, Air Force commands. When you're in communications, you are smack dab in the middle of just an astounding string of intelligence-related information. Much of it really doesn't need to be classified, actually. On a daily basis, I interacted with members of the Naval Intelligence and Naval Security Group, which is Naval Security Group, or NAVSEC, is the naval subsidiary of the National Security. I was responsible for creating an entire stream of classified and unclassified message craft, what are known as AGS, AIGS, addressed indicated groups. Let me make one up. AG 555, aircraft maintenance. I was also responsible for creating what are known as CADs, collective address designators. Now let me make one up. NASCAR. Anybody that had an interest in NASCAR from a crew standpoint, driver standpoint, or a racetrack standpoint, were all action or info addressees on these types of messages. Not only was I a member involved in communications, but I was the go-to guy. If somebody in anti-submarine warfare needed a certain type of message traffic, they came to me. Somebody involved in electronic countermeasures, flying around in the EAB prowlers, they came to me. If somebody that worked at a contractor working at one of the power propulsion desks, whether it's contractors from Pratt & Whitney, General Electric, what have you, they came to me. They came to me with types of messages they needed to see. And I manipulated the database to ensure that they got those messages and nothing else. Nobody wants to see message traffic that's unrelated to their activity. I had carte blanche to visit any communications station, either onshore or our particular interest was with the carrier battle groups as well as the affiliated air station. So within our region, I had carte blanche to any communication station.
May seem impossible,
by the time I left,
but with persistence,
my clearance was being upgraded to a crypto level, and I would have been
you will master any
the go-to guy. I would have been in charge of running a standalone communication system for our 3-star admiral, what's known as a Type Command. Our 3-star admiral in charge of all naval aviation activities in the Persian Gulf, Indian Ocean, and the Pacific. But I chose not to stick around. I resigned. On top of that, I'm a student of military history with an emphasis on intelligence, counterintelligence, and special operations. I'm also a student of the American Civil War. So, unlike most people in the military, who I find it astonishingly ignorant about the history of this country, the history of their particular military activity, I was sort of well-rounded. I understood the significance of what it was I was reading. I understood the history of what it was I was reading. So that's just a bit about me. And
I did it.
One other thing that you know about
the Force is my ally.
is that I am an alien abductor.
Remembering old tricks.
I've had numerous encounters with reptilians, with what are known as the reptilian greys.
Think you can show me that
You always
shortcut
hear
again?
about the ubiquitous gray beings. Well, the beings that I had encounters with in full waking consciousness were what are known as reptilian greys, what the late great Dr. Carla Turner referred to as the chicken claws. They don't have a long finger and a long nail. They just have claws. And when you wake up and then you find yourself surrounded by 3 of these things with claws and they're looking down at you, believe me, that can be a pretty traumatic experience. So I know wherein I speak. When I speak about alien abduction, and particularly encounters with reptilians, I can develop an instant kinship and understanding with others who have experienced the same thing. My colleagues and I have always taken the approach of being friends first, researchers later, because people will only open up to you if they know that you have a vested emotional interest in them. Too often, researchers use the information from an abductee or someone who had novel experiences, and then after their book is written, discard them. They become baggage. But we don't do that. What we do is we work long-term with the people we're involved with. My mentor is Barbara Bartholomew, in my opinion, the greatest alien abduction researcher on this planet. She has had a number of proteges, some of whom you may have heard of. The late, great Dr. Carla Turner, Candy to her friends. Jim Walden, he co-wrote a book with Barbara Bartholomew. She helped substantially with the creation of his book. He writes about his own experiences as, for all intents and purposes, a host of a reptilian entity, an interdimensional reptilian entity. I will explain the mechanics behind that in a moment. E. Morgan Ellen Morgan, a close colleague of mine, who has studied at the feet of Barbara Bartholomew, in particular the subject of what is known as the alien love bite. Now, this may seem somewhat comical to those who don't know any better, and I will elaborate on this more, but we are emitters, we are resonators. And what some of these negative beings strive to do is engender negative emotions and feelings within us of anger, of pain, of misery, of isolation, hopelessness. What the alien love bite is what it is. It's a setting up of a love bonding drama between 2 abductees, oftentimes bonded from childhood, where they're abducted and re-abducted, and as they grow older, oftentimes not knowing of the existence of the other, they've already developed strong astral connections and strong subconscious connections. And then decades later, Jack and Jill, let's say, meet at a UFO conference, very common, and then an instant chemistry, an instant bond between them develops, where they feel that they've had sexual relations with one another. They have extreme close body, like chemical reactions with one another. They begin to psychically develop communication with each other. And then one of the outcomes of that is that an emotional unplugging occurs where one is left in an unrequited state because they can't consummate the relationship because they may be married. But the bottom line, the reason for this is gender, extreme emotions of misery, unhappiness, unrequited love. And these beings, they feed off that. They feed off that in the way you or I nurture ourselves on food or protein or what have you. These beings literally strive to create negative situations in our life for a number of reasons, but mostly to feed off of us. Now, there are 4 subjects I will discuss today. In general, I'm here to talk about the reptilian overlordship. The reptilian overlordship, the proof of which is all around us. The global institutionalized sex slavery, the wars and the rumors of wars, the designer plagues. All of these things are part and parcel of the rapidly advancing movement towards global centralized control, the privatization of water, genetically modified foods. All these things are part and parcel of the reptilian overlordship. They're around us. We see this all the time. The people just don't realize that there is a controlling factor behind all of it. The tendency on the part of some conspiracy researchers is to ascribe all these activities on the part of power-mad bankers, power-mad humans, economists. Not only the conception, but the execution of this advancing globalized, centralized agenda is thousands of years in the making, and a purely human consciousness cannot conceive of, let alone affect these changes. Because if you have any understanding of metaphysics at all, you will know that everything manifests first in the spiritual realm before it manifests in the physical realm. That's just the way it is. A simple thought followed by an action. Just one very basic example. How else is the reptilian overlordship manifested to us? So vulgarity, extreme vulgarity. Movies like Jackass have become hits. All these efforts at promoting vulgarity as the norm in our society. The occultic symbology. My friend Jordan Maxwell out there in the convention hall. He is a foremost expert on occultic symbology. And he's had his information borrowed and stolen constantly. In fact, the Tom Hanks character in the movie Da Vinci Code is a pale imitation of Jordan Maxwell. And you see the symbology when you walk down the aisles of the supermarket. Every time you see a obelisk, you're looking at a representation of a reptilian phallus. In other words, they're just sticking it to you and you don't even realize it. It's there in front of you.
Okay, you probably would have won.
That's the reptilian overlordship in a nutshell, which I'll elaborate on more later. The 4 aspects of the reptilian overlordship I will talk about are 1, the reptilians and their modus operandi. 2, the hybrid hosting process, which is the fundamental building block, fundamental basis for the reptilian overlordship. 3, MyLabs, which are legitimate alien abductees who have been utilized by deep black elements of the military intelligence community as covert operatives because of innate abilities they have, paraphysical abilities. All abductees are part of particular bloodlines, and many of these MyLabs have latent paraphysical capabilities precisely because they've been utilized and genetically modified and upgraded, if you will, by various and sundry alien groups, particularly the reptilian. And the 4th thing I will talk about, I will tie up all those 3 subjects at the end. Now, the first thing I will talk about is the reptilians.
What's this?
There are essentially 2 types of reptilians. There's the spacefaring reptilians. They literally fly around in spaceships. And then there are what's been described as the interterrestrials that live within the Earth, that are essentially native to this planet. They've been here as long as, or longer than we have. And these beings have developed over time an interdimensional capability. They are masters of frequency and resonance. They can alter their density. The reptilians have attained control of the surface, through a mastery of genetics, through control of the human gene pool, modifying the human race in general and particular bloodlines in particular, to the point where they develop attributes, behaviors, capabilities that match the reptilian agenda on the surface. The reptilians come in a number of different shapes and sizes. Some are rather small, 4.5 to 5 feet tall. More commonly, they're 6 feet tall and taller. Some as high as 7.5 feet tall. They can be a number of colors, like dark green, brownish, which can be described as sea green. There's a particular type of reptilian species we refer to as the yellow bellies. There are many reptile-type species on the surface, like crocodiles and alligators, that have a tannish or a whitish underside. There are literally reptilians that have a whitish or a tannish underside, called the yellow bellies. And these reptilians, over time, have developed the ability, like I said, they can alter their density. Now, how do they interact with the humans? Well, let's start with how reptilians interact with females, human females. Now, most of these human females that have encounters with reptilians are, in all likelihood, reptilian hybrids to a degree themselves. I refer to them as reptilian familiars. Familiar in the family sense, the generational sense. These reptilians will follow certain bloodlines, generation after generation. And when a woman is having encounters with reptilians, it's because she's been genetically modified to the point where she's suitable for a reptilian access for purposes of mating or what have you.
I've been alone for...
How does a reptilian rape a human woman?
Without any...
Let's say a woman is sleeping at night. What the reptilian can do is...
There's no way to live.
It can...
Not for a Jedi.
Appear,
or a droid.
And sometimes she may...
Maybe we're done
hiding. But you can see the depression of weight that the reptilian is leaving. For example, you can see a depression of weight on a mattress, on a sofa, on the carpet. But you cannot see the reptilian itself. It may choose not to allow you to see it. And what the woman may feel is a sudden pressure on her chest, or if she's laying on her stomach, a sudden pressure on her back. And what will happen is oftentimes the reptilian will sexually assault the human woman. And let's say the woman is lying on her back and the reptilian assaults her but is invisible. She will not be able to see what is going on. Although she will feel the thrusting action of the reptilian's member. Let's say, for example, that she can move her arms or she can move her hands. She may try to block or prevent the organ of the reptilian from entering her. But she will not feel anything, but she'll try. Paradoxically, she will still feel the insertion of the reptilian's member into one or the other orifices. So it's somewhat of a paradox. It's like, well, she can't block it with her hand, but she still feels it, thrusting inside of her. I should have added in my preface that this kind of adult content, so,
I put the disclaimer.
But I really do believe that there are members of the audience that are somewhat young and whose parents or mother is having these experiences now as good a time as any to learn. So you have something of a paradox where the reptilian can penetrate layers of bed clothes, bed sheets, linen, bed clothes, and densify particular parts of its anatomy, like its member or its claws, and still remain invisible. Now, what the reptilian can also do is the guy of someone that belongs to the action or has involved with the past. The reptilian can appear as an explorer. Just got a crush with someone as she runs into the laundry mat, at the apartment complex. The reptilian can appear as that particular person. Or, conversely, if the reptilian wants to engender as much fear and terror from the
abductee, it can allow itself, it can reveal itself in its full reptilian glory, if you will. And if you haven't seen a scheduled reptilian, if you haven't seen a reptilian in person, snout, big eyes, sometimes yellowish, sometimes reddish, vertical slit pupils, sometimes big flaring nostrils, rows of sharp teeth, extremely robust claws. And what the reptilian can also do, if it really wants to create terror within the abductee, is not only can it allow itself to be seen, but the reptilians and also reptilians and human reptilians, some of them, have the ability to somehow trigger within the mind, the brain of the abductee, specific memories of previous child abuse, previous sexual abuse. So the reptilian can trigger that part of the mind of the abductee, and she will begin to remember a sexual assault child, a time when she was raped. And not only that though, but what a number of researchers into satanic ritual abuse and mind control have discovered is that energy is locked into the bodies of ritual abuse and mind control victims. It's locked into the bodies, and it's blocked, and it's incapable of getting out. What the reptilians can do is cause not only the memories of the childhood sexual assault to flood into the mind of the person and force them to relive that sexual assault in real time, but the attendant body memories also can be made to surface. So it causes the abductee, the woman, to freeze up, become petrified and terrified, and all the while the reptilian feeds off of this. Now, one of the byproducts of a reptilian sexual assault, well, there are a number of them where the woman is concerned. One of them is extremely heightened libido. And the reason for this is because the reptilian has the ability to activate what's known as the chi, the sexual of the woman. He has extremely powerful full body orgasms from the tips of the toes all the way to the head, just leaving them breathless. And this could last literally for hours. Now, there are some consequences to that. And I'm not trying to make light of it. It's facet of it is very real. Where the woman will feel intense shame about what is going on. Because nobody wants to for themselves if they're having sexual assault. But at the same time, the force and the power of the orgasm are such that after a while she begins to wonder when the energy will come back, to long for that feeling again. And this creates a cycle of guilt and shame. Another byproduct of sexual assault is that the female abductee, for a short period of time after the sexual assault, will be extremely psychic. In fact, I know of a case, a female, a close friend of mine, who's had a number of reptilian experiences and a number of military experiences. A reptilian came into her house, sexually assaulted her, and no sooner did the reptilian leave that the military, through some means which we haven't quite figured out, they have the means to pull in pilots to work with.
Good job.
From their house, straight to their realm, to some kind of teleportation device, some kind of portal. We don't really know the mechanics behind it, but they just have a means of taking someone and then just deploying it to some other location, underground installation. So no sooner had this reptilian rape started, and the military pulled her into the underground base and immediately set her to work on a remote viewing operation. Virgin Gulf period. So that felt one of the things. The military, knowing that this woman 100 has had a lifetime experience with reptilians, monitor her household. They have sensors that are sensitive enough to indicate when a reptilian manifests. And there is an energetic spike when a reptilian manifests, because they don't need spaceships to travel around it. They can open up a portal in your wall, walk right through. Very often, hear stories of them coming out of a closet. It's a very common point of that. Reptilians and other beings, where they create a portal and they come from the closet. You know, children's boogeyman stories are frequently talked about when monsters come out of the closet. That was going to discuss later. Ted Bundy, serial killer, complained about scaly figures in his closet. So what does that tell me? It tells me that the military was either monitoring the moment, knew a reptilian had come, had sexually assaulted her, and decided to exploit that circumstance and use her in a or it's possible reptilians military effort and utilized her in this operation. You know these things happen by this experience. Some of the other things that woman is they literally they want to body and then what the woman describes is something similar to astral body experience, where her consciousness will leave her physical body, and this reptilian will then come in and then engage in intercourse with the partner. And oftentimes, the energy taking over the woman's body can get into all kinds of real sordid kink, get into all kinds of perverted activity. The woman in the natural body is watching this, saying, "That's not me, I wouldn't do it." So that's also important that they can take over the body of a person while they're having it. Later on, I will explain some of the mechanics of that as far as the hybrid dosing process. For now, just keep in mind that there are some psychics that have the ability, when they look at a person, whether on TV, out in public, they can literally see a reptilian energy overshadowing the person. Call that person a host. They are wittingly or unwittingly hosting reptilian energy. So keep that point in mind. It's very important. One of the things that the reptilians also do is they, like I said before, they strive to create as much pain and anguish within the people. Now, this could be for male abductees as well. A very common tactic that the reptilians do is they strive to create a lower vacuum. And what this does is it causes that...
This tool was used by someone eager to reach the vault.
But emit that energy, emit emotion, energy of suffering, anguish, and hopelessness. What the reptilians do is they develop strongholds within us. One inevitable byproduct of a lot of these experiences is the abductee will resort to self-medication. I can speak with experience because when I was in high school, I had a lot of abductees. And I know if I had a choice of laying there to death, and when I was a kid, a veritable mountain, the lights that were on, and I was scared. But as I got older, on the fact that they resort to self-medication is only because they don't know what's happening, or it's a stress reliever. The reptilians strive to create compulsive behaviors within us. They strive to create self-destructive behaviors with us, whether it's addictions, compulsive behaviors, other self-destructive activities, sexual addictions, whatever the case may be, because all of these things can be utilized by the reptilian to control the person. Isolation and the feelings of isolation is a very effective control mechanism that the reptilians and aliens in general utilize on people. For example, if a woman is having these experiences, but her husband or her significant other is extremely negative about the subject, that tends to make the woman feel even more isolated. Her health is even more alone. The ETs and the reptilians will literally program her spouse or significant other to even become agitated or angry when the subject comes up. So, the end result of that is it pulls out one possible source of emotional support for the woman undergoing these experiences. And, we can see the opposite happening with males going through experiences and the people around them being extremely negative. I was once punched out by my ex-brother-in-law, who I believe, I call him a closet case of abduction, based on the experiences he's had. The things he described to me, I know he's had abduction. One time, I guess I punched one of his wrong buttons. Been the subject of getting hauled off and slugged me. Be done for a good fight. That's just an example, of mechanism. And one thing that you should also realize too is, as abductees, and I know I'm talking to somebody in the audience, certain types of programming is instilled within many abductees to make them become agitated when they hear this information, to make them fall asleep or become sleepy throughout. Many times I've been giving lectures and I look over and someone just calmed down. That the information is such that it triggers a built-in response to the person falling asleep, so they don't hear the information. Other trigger mechanisms are becoming agitated. Suddenly, the overwhelming compulsion to get up and simply leave. All of these things help to keep that abductee isolated and ignorant of information that may help them.
Let's go, BD1.
One of the more controversial aspects of the reptilian abduction agenda is what is known as the crank program. The ETs and the reptilians create certain programs. There's what's been described as the Palladian New Age Gladiator program, where you can cross blonde-haired women believe that they're Palladian hybrid walk-ins. They're really just having horrendous reptilian experiences, but they don't realize it because the programming and manipulation is such that they only are allowed to remember pleasant experiences, feel-good experiences. Then there are other programs, great programs. The foremost pioneer in this facet of the reptilian research is my mentor, Barbara Bartholin. Now, most of you are familiar with the problem of crystal meth, also a derivative known as crank. But many of you may not realize that it is part and parcel of the reptilian abduction agenda. A colleague of mine, I haven't spoken to in a long time, is a guy named George Andrews. And he put together, compiled a book called Drugs and Magic, which is a synopsis of shamanic practices around the world, different cultures, where drugs are utilized in order to expand one's consciousness and to be able to interact and commune with non-human beings, very often interdimensional beings, but sometimes more corporeal beings. Drugs and Magic. You can find that book. Please get it. What the reptilians have done is, through their control of the human reptilian hybrids here on the surface, they have created this crank crystal meth pandemic. The reptilians resonate at the sympathetic frequency of crystal meth crank. If you study the police blotters and the crime histories of people who are on crystal meth and crank, you will find certain commonalities. One, they are prone to like mayhem and berserk, sadistic, violent behavior. If you really peer closely, you will find that many crank users are into perverse, outrageous sexual practices, including cannibalism and what have you. Because what the crank and crystal meth does is it affects the brain chemistry of the person using the drug. Now, I should mention that many people that are reptilian hybrids or hosts have a genetic predisposition to hosting or because of the long-term genetic manipulation. But someone who is a crank user or a crystal meth user needn't have that genetic predisposition. Crank is fast track to getting possessed, not only by reptilians, but like demonic entities in general. What the spouses and the significant others, the girlfriends of crank users have described is that when their husband or their boyfriend goes into a crank-induced rage, literally sometimes they're like a reptilian lizard-like image just suddenly comes over their face, like overshadows their face. Sometimes their pupils go vertical. Sometimes it manifests in other ways, such as a fascination with more perverse, kinky sex, for example. My mentor, Barbara Barthwick, had spoken to a headhunter in the semiconductor industry in Silicon Valley. This guy was a computer scientist, and his job was to recruit software engineers, software designers in Silicon Valley. As such, he was privy to all kinds of interesting information, including plans to microchip the entire population, but that's another story. What this guy experienced from prolonged crank use was that, and he was an extremely sharp individual. I listened to the audio tape of Barbara's interview with him. What he described is it got to the point where his paranoia was such that the ETs and the reptilians no longer bothered to conceal themselves. They would flit in and out of reality constantly at all times. Get home, it could be driving his car, it could be at the workplace, they would just pop up because, like I said, the reptilians have a sympathetic frequency to the drug crank crystal methadone. Long-term users begin to resonate at that frequency, and it allows the entities to, what I call, interface with that person. And as time goes on, this guy, I think his name was Chris, he began having more and more perverse thoughts. It got to the point where the moment he got home from work in the Silicon Valley job, he would get right online onto the computer and start going to the child pornography sites. He couldn't help it, and he realized that he had a problem. And the reason he got a hold of Barbara was my mentor was giving a radio interview, and he happened to be one of those, and he contacted Barbara through the radio program. And another interesting thing that Chris said was he eventually attended a crystal meth support group, like a 12-step group for crystal meth and crank users. And privately, amongst themselves, probably not to the counselors because they always lie to them, but amongst themselves, just about every single other crystal meth and crank user described a similar outcome, where they were compelled to go to the child pornography sites, compelled to get involved in that kind of entertainment, if you will. So what it shows is and it provides them a medium to affect changes here on the surface. There was a case in San Diego, I lived there for many years, where in what we call East County, there was a prankster couple, Hispanic couple, they were hitting the niece and baby into it. It was a toddler, and then the skin literally melted off the child. It was horrible. I saw on TV they brought the couple in to court for an arraignment, and you could just see looking in their eyes. It's like lights are on, but nobody's home. It's because they had become possessed and taken over. There are countless examples of this. I have a female abductee, my lab friend, who works in a state hospital, essentially an asylum for violent criminals in California. And what the counselors are told over and over again by long-term crank and crystal meth users is they hear voices in their head. These voices tell them to do things. These voices tell them to harm themselves and harm others. It's such a common thing that it's taken for granted. And let me tell you a story about a personal friend of mine. This guy was a reptilian hybrid, through and through. He was really into the gonzo films where women would be, slapped and abused and carried around in briefcases.
For such a peaceful
That
culture to have any sort of
place so emblematic of the reptilian mindset. You see, one thing you have to understand about the reptilians is they have this concept of human ownership. The reptilians have a concept of human ownership which manifests across the board, from the literal standpoint of hosting and taking over somebody to organizing global institutionalized sex slavery. All across the board, the reptilians have this concept of human ownership. And this is manifested in a lot of these so-called porn films where, women are abused and women are carried around in briefcases like they're cattle or toys. That's another facet of the reptilian overlordship is the diminution and the marginalization of the feminine principle. Women and children are prey to the reptilians and the reptilian hybrids who, through genetic manipulation, have risen to positions of power and service. And I was warning Joe about I shouldn't say his name, sorry. Let's call him Phil. I said, I was warning Phil about this again. Listen, man, you got all the hallmarks. You had all these experiences and abductions. You're borderline. You got to watch it. You know what I mean? You got to avoid watching these kinds of videos because it's going to really do a number on your mind. Well, Phil was also a crankster, and he went off on a week-long binge of crank, and the end result of which, when he came down, when it got to the point he was physically incapable of ingesting any more crank, he kind of was in the process of coming down in a completely paranoid, delusional state of mind, during which he told me that he left his body, he shot up into the sky, he came down in a place that he believed to be somewhere in Los Angeles. He came down into the body of a man in an alleyway, and the moment he got into the body of that man, he lunged after and he strangled to death the first woman that happened to be around. So, after a long crank, he comes down into a man and he just immediately goes and assaults a woman and presumably kills her. And the way he was describing the experience, it was like he was reliving the experience. Some of these guys that are reptilian hybrids that have this aspect of dominance over females and sadomasochism and dominance and submission.
We'll talk inside.
When you hear them talk about women,
BD1, this is great.
a red flag's pop up. Like when I see a great-looking gal, wow, she's a great-looking gal, right? Look at her eye. Now, someone who's
BD1.
like a reptilian hybrid, full-on reptilian hybrid, their reaction is entirely different. Yeah, you see that chick? She's a great-looking gal, was he? Yeah, I saw her. You see the difference? You see the mindset where another guy could look at a gal and have this, aesthetic beauty. Look at God's creation. Someone else who's a hybrid with this reptilian concept of human ownership. It's a different mindset, but
contains a list of Force-sensitive
you have to be aware that you gals especially.
The next generation.
These reptilians and the humans they work through, they can be very charismatic, they can be very charming.
I was his apprentice.
But I really believe that a lot of times, the reason some of you gals are seemingly addicted to negative, abusive guys is because of the reptilian hybrid male's ability
stores information,
to
but
manipulate
only
your
accessible
kundalini.
to Jedi. Hang on, I think I have one around here.
A reptilian-human hybrid has the ability to astral travel at will. They can astrally rape people. Like, some of you gals meet some guy here, and then like a few days later, he starts coming into your dreams and having it.
This is Master Obi-Wan.
That's very common. I call them astral rape toys. And the ones who do this repetitively, I call serial rape toys. It is an innate capability that reptilian human hybrids have.
And defeat the
Not all of them, some of them.
Okay, no problem.
Because some of them
Except
are
for
literally
is getting
coached
deep
and
inside the vault.
taught how to
Don't
do
let
this
the
by
whole
their
group
reptilian
back.
familiars.
You mentioned something
They
about the
can
planet
see
down
into
here
these
and
other
a
dimensions.
Zepho homeworld.
I mean, you would see nobody around them, but they can see reptilians around them. And they will teach these hybrids to do these things. So a lot of times you gals, if you get like involved with like a really negative, abusive guy,
I had an experience
he's probably one of these reptilian
changed my
hybrids
perspective.
that person has.
I can't keep hiding
Just
from
be
the
aware of
empire,
it.
so
They're
I don't
everywhere.
really have a choice.
Cal, as long as you're alive, you will always have a
I'm here
choice.
to tell you what the bodies that female abductees have. How much?
We're in.
Dathomir Zepho, it's your...
Half an hour? Give me the hardcore stuff now.